I want to start today's deep dive with a premise that, honestly, it might make your brain itch a little bit. It's definitely disorienting.
Hmm. That's a big ask.
It is. It really is. But I want to ask you to just suspend everything you think you know for the next, I don't know, 20 minutes or so.
Okay, I'm with you.
Because we are going to look at a figure that everyone thinks they know Christ. But we're not going to look at him as a historical figure.
Right.
We aren't going to look at him as a deity to be worshipped in a church. We aren't even really going to touch on religion in the traditional sense.
No, we're stripping all of that away.
Exactly. What if, instead, we looked at Christ as a specific pattern of human intelligence?
Like a blueprint.
Yes, like a blueprint or a schematic for how a mind works when it's operating at, like, absolute peak efficiency without any distortion at all.
It's a fascinating pivot. And just to ground everyone, we are diving into a text called The Architecture of Undistorted Intelligence, specifically excerpt 11. And what I love about this source is that it approaches this whole subject almost like a structural engineering problem. It's not asking you to believe anything.
No.
It's just asking you to analyze the physics of a mind that doesn't bend under pressure.
The physics of a mind. That's a great way to put it. Because the source starts with this really, really sharp distinction that I think we have to unpack before we go anywhere else. It distinguishes between a personality and a pattern.
This is the core foundation of the whole argument.
It says, and I'm quoting here, Christ is not the object of faith. Christ is the form of undistorted intelligence under authority.
Wow.
When I first read that, I had to stop. I literally put my coffee down. Because usually when we talk about famous figures, Jesus, Gandhi, whoever, we are obsessed with their personality.
Dude, completely.
Yeah.
Who were they? What were they like? Were they nice?
Exactly. And the text argues that this focus on personality is actually, it's a trap. It says personality invites projection, whereas pattern invites recognition.
And that distinction is everything.
Okay, let's dig into that first part. Personality invites projection. Because we do this all the time, right? We see a leader or a celebrity, and we just project our own needs onto them. We want a father figure or a hero or a rebel. We basically cast them in a movie that's all about our own lives.
We fill in the blanks with our own desires. If you feel weak, you project strength onto that leader. If you feel guilty, you project forgiveness onto the Savior. You aren't actually seeing the person. You're just seeing a reflection of what you need them to be.
So, according to the source, when you treat Christ, or any figure of that magnitude, as a personality, you miss the point entirely.
You're just turning them into a mascot.
A mascot, or an idol. The source is so blunt here. It says, devotion replaces discernment. Belief replaces understanding.
Which means if I'm busy worshiping you or being a fan of you, I am specifically not studying the mechanics of how you operate.
You're just staring at the surface.
Right.
So the goal of this text, then, is to stop staring at the surface, stop worshiping the figure, and start looking at the structure underneath. To see the pattern. So if we strip away the beard, the robes, all the history, what is the pattern?
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for anyone into, like, psychology or high-stakes leadership.
Right.
The source defines this pattern as intelligence that is no longer organized around self-protection.
No longer organized around self-protection. Say more about that.
It's intelligence that, quote, remains coherent under pressure.
That is such a heavy concept if you really think about it. Coherent under pressure.
It is.
Because I know for a fact my intelligence is not coherent under pressure. If I'm in a high-stakes meeting and someone challenges me, or if I'm in an argument, I fracture.
You get defensive.
I get defensive. I start explaining myself. I try to win.
You perform. That's the key word the text uses. When we're under pressure, we perform.
Oh, that's good.
We perform innocence. Hey, it wasn't my fault. We perform authority. Do you know who I am?
Yep.
We perform competence. We are constantly negotiating our position just to stay safe.
We're shape-shifting. We become whatever we think we need to be to survive the moment.
Precisely.
Yeah.
We negotiate our integrity for safety. We do it dozens of times a day.
Like laughing at a bad joke because your boss told it.
That's a fracture in intelligence right there. Or you agree with the consensus you know is wrong because you don't want to be the outcast. That's a distortion.
And this Christ pattern, this structural blueprint, it doesn't do any of that.
Never. The source lists the attributes. It doesn't resort to pride. It doesn't resort to shame. It doesn't perform innocence. It simply is.
It refuses to negotiate its reality just to make things comfortable.
Yeah.
Which would make it incredibly alien to us. I mean, imagine being in a room with someone who just absolutely refuses to perform.
It's unsettling.
Someone who doesn't care if you like them, doesn't care if you agree with them, isn't trying to sell you anything. That's not just confident. That's, yeah, unsettling is the right word.
It is deeply unsettling. And that brings us to the next major point the source makes, which completely flips our idea of teaching on its head.
Okay.
The text asserts that this pattern leads rather than teaches.
Yeah, I circled this part like 3 times. Because if you ask anyone, believer or atheist, what was Jesus, they'll almost all say, a great moral teacher.
Of course.
We love teachers, we built statues of them, but this text seems to almost look down on teaching.
I don't think it looks down on it so much as it redefines it structurally. The source argues that teaching is a response to error.
A response to error.
Think about it. If I have to teach you something, it implies you don't know it or you have a misconception.
Right.
Teaching involves explanation. It involves correction. It involves retracing steps. The text says teaching speaks from a memory of distortion.
Oh, I see. So it's remedial. It's like saying, okay, you took a wrong turn back there. Let me pull out the map and show you where you messed up.
Exactly. Let me show you how to get back on track. Teaching is engaged in the argument. It's trying to bridge that gap between ignorance and knowledge. It's a back and forth.
Okay.
But the Christ pattern, according to this architecture, doesn't come from correction. It arises from alignment. It doesn't try to persuade you. It is positional.
Positional. Okay, help me visualize that, because orientation rather than argument sounds very philosophical. What does that look like in real life?
Okay, so imagine 2 guides in a dense forest.
Right.
One guide, the teacher standing right next to you. You're lost. They're showing you the map. They're pointing at the moss on the trees. They're explaining logically why north is that way.
They're trying to convince my mind.
That's the persuasion.
Yeah.
That's the argument. Now imagine the second figure. This one isn't looking at you. They aren't explaining
Okay.
the moss.
Okay.
They were simply standing 50 yards away on the only solid rock in the middle of a swamp, and they're facing the exit.
They aren't waving or anything?
No, they're just standing there.
They're just positioned correctly.
Yes, their authority doesn't come from what they are saying. It comes from where they are standing.
And you follow them not because they want to debate with you, but because you look over and realize, oh, they aren't sinking. I am.
I should probably go stand where they're standing.
That's a huge shift. It's leading by orientation, not asking for permission.
Right. And the text says this type of authority does not explain itself into permission. And that is the bridge to the most radical part of this analysis.
Which is?
Because if you have a figure that leads by simple orientation, who doesn't argue, doesn't explain, and doesn't negotiate, that figure becomes incredibly dangerous.
Dangerous to whom?
Dangerous to systems of power. The source explicitly says this intelligence is destabilizing to systems of power.
Okay, let's unpack the mechanics of that. Because we see power everywhere. Politics, corporations, social hierarchies. How does a guy just standing on a rock destabilize a whole system?
Well, how does a system usually maintain control? What are the levers?
Leverage, money, fear, access. You know, if you do this, I'll give you a raise. If you don't do this, you're fired. If you say that, we'll cancel you.
Exactly. Leverage, reward, threat, legitimacy, consensus. Every authority structure we have depends on those buttons. I can control you because I know you want something, or I know you're afraid of something.
Right, my need to be safe is the handle you grab to steer me.
But what happens when you encounter an intelligence that, as we defined earlier, is not organized around self-protection?
The handle is gone.
The buttons don't work. The text says this intelligence does not respond to flattery or fear. It doesn't defend itself when accused.
It's like an interrogation room.
Yeah, imagine that. The interrogator screams, threatens, then offers a deal, then tries to be your friend. They're cycling through every tool of control.
And the person on the other side of the table just sits there.
Calm. Not defiant, not angry, just undistorted.
That would be terrifying for the interrogator.
It creates a vacuum. It exposes the fact that the interrogator's power is an illusion that relies on the other person's reaction.
By not reacting, by not defending, the pattern exposes the system as fraudulent.
You're a glitch in the matrix. You're proving that fear is optional.
And that's why the source argues there are only 2 outcomes when this pattern appears in a rigid system. It can't be integrated, it can't be used, it can only be followed or removed.
Followed or removed.
That feels historically accurate. I mean, look at history. When someone comes along who can't be bought and can't be scared, we usually kill them.
Or exile them.
Yeah. Because they make the rest of us look bad. They make the system look weak.
Exactly. But the text also talks about a third option, a more subtle way of removing the threat without any violence.
Okay.
It's what the source calls domesticating the pattern.
Domesticating, like taking a wolf and turning it into a poodle so it can sleep at the foot of your bed.
That is a perfect analogy. If you can't destroy the figure, you neutralize their impact. And the source says we do this by turning Christ into a moral teacher, a miracle worker, or a savior.
Wait, hold on. I have to play devil's advocate here. Aren't those good things?
Well, they sound like it.
Calling someone a savior or a moral teacher is a sign of respect, isn't it? How is that neutralizing them?
It feels like respect, but structurally, it's a containment strategy. Think about it. If I label you a savior, what does that mean for me?
That you're gonna save me.
Right. It means you do the work. You save me. I just have to believe in you. I don't have to change my own structure. I just have to applaud yours.
Ah, I see. It outsources the responsibility.
And if I call you a moral teacher, then I just have to follow your rules.
Do not steal. Love your neighbor.
It becomes a checklist of behaviors. I can follow the rules without ever actually changing the core of how my mind processes reality.
So it becomes about behavior modification. Act nice rather than be real.
Precisely. And the text creates this amazing contrast here. It says, Christ does not model better behavior.
That is such a record scratch moment. Does not model better behavior?
I know.
Because that's what we tell kids in Sunday school. Be like Jesus, he behaved well.
But the source says, no, that's domestication. That's the poodle. What the pattern actually models is something much, much harder.
Which is?
It models undivided perception in the presence of authority.
Undivided perception. Okay, we need to break that down. What is divided perception?
Divided perception is how most of us live, most of the time. You're in a meeting with your boss, part of your brain is listening to the data, but another part, maybe a bigger part, is scanning the room.
Does he like me? Is this safe?
Should I speak up? What if I'm wrong? Your intelligence is split between seeing the reality and calculating your survival.
It's like looking through a cracked lens. One eye's on the truth, the other eye's on the exit.
Exactly. So undivided perception is the ability to stand in that high-pressure room and simply see.
To see the reality without the filter of what will happen to me.
It's intelligence that isn't subordinated to identity or fear.
That explains the definition we started with, intelligence under authority. It's not responding to the external authority of the boss or the mob.
Right.
It's acting under the authority of what? Reality itself.
The authority of the truth of the situation. It aligns with what is rather than what is safe. And the source claims this isn't some magic trick. It says this pattern recurs across cultures and eras.
So it's not just one guy 2,000 years ago.
No. The text argues that the structure reappears whenever intelligence ceases to perform.
Interesting.
It suggests that this is actually the natural state of human intelligence, but it's buried under layers of trauma and culture and defense mechanisms. It's like a default setting we've lost access to.
So it's not about adding something supernatural to yourself. It's about subtraction. It's what's left when you subtract the fear, subtract the need for approval, subtract the whole performance.
Yes. The source addresses the supernatural element directly. It says, and I love this line, Christ is not rare because he is supernatural. He is rare because undistorted intelligence is rare.
Wow. That puts the ball firmly back in our court. It suggests this is accessible, at least theoretically. But man, it's hard. It requires letting go of every safety net we've ever built.
It does. And that's why we usually prefer the domesticated version.
Right.
We'd rather have a religion than a transformation. We'd rather worship the messenger than actually read the message.
So bringing this all back to the listener, if this pattern is so rare, and if we're so used to the fake versions, the performers, the persuaders, the personalities, how would we even spot the real thing?
That's the ultimate question.
If we met someone operating from this undistorted intelligence today, would we even notice them?
The source gives us a clue. It says you don't recognize it by charisma. You don't recognize it by force or by volume. You recognize it by the absence of defense.
The absence of defense.
When you encounter someone who has absolutely nothing to protect, no image, no ego, no narrative, it creates a very distinctive feeling. It's disarming.
How so?
If I am trying to fight you or impress you, and you simply refuse to engage on that level, not because you're weak, but because you have no self to defend, I have nothing to push against.
It's like trying to punch smoke.
Exactly. And that absence of defense is what creates the orientation. The source ends with this really haunting image about this type of leadership.
Okay.
It says, it simply stands there, intact, until others realize they are already following it.
That gives me chills. Until they realize they are already following it.
It implies that on some deep level, we crave reality. We crave undistorted authority. So when we finally see it, someone who isn't performing, isn't lying, isn't afraid, our internal compass just recognizes magnetic north.
We don't have to be persuaded.
We just align. It bypasses the brain and goes straight to the gut.
But you have to be willing to look past the show. You have to stop looking for the personality that makes you feel good and start looking for the pattern that is simply true. This deep dive really forces you to check your own operating system, you know? We spend so much time building our personalities, polishing our arguments, defending our little territories.
We do.
And the source suggests that all of that is actually an obstruction. That real intelligence, the kind that changes the world, looks like, well, it looks like silence. It looks like standing still.
Yeah, it looks like the courage to be undistorted.
So I want to leave you with a thought to mull over as you go about your week. We live in this economy of attention and persuasion. Everyone is trying to convince you of something, sell you a narrative, argue for their authority.
Constantly.
But the source suggests that true authority never argues.
Never.
So the question is, in this noisy world, would you even be able to recognize leadership that simply stands? Or are we so addicted to the performance that we'd walk right past the real thing?
It's a question worth asking.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.